Shalom, party people, and welcome to the 12th Sea. Rocking a 60-pound rucksack this go round, and just seeing where we go. Mr. JD Stone on my left. Sound off, Mr. JD Stone.
I only have 27.6 pounds in my rucksack.
Well, I wasn't going to tell the world that you were a little light today, but
I'm super light.
But either way, we're trudging along, and there's a couple days past the full moon up there for the one little bit of light that you're gonna see for the next few minutes. And I don't know if we're trudging, but we're not moving with insane gusto, and I'm okay with that right now.
Cruising. We're cruising.
Sure, I can live with cruising. Although now I'm thinking of Chaucer in A Knight's Tale. I am trudging to trudge. So,
yes.
already seen deer this morning. But sound off in the comments if you were getting after it, especially before the sun gets up. And if you were unaware, which I highly doubt that anyone's really watching past a minute and a half in this anyway, but if you're unaware, I have an Instagram account now that you can be in my group of followers, accountability group, whatever you want to call it, and get pictures of my watch and of shirtless men and the food that I eat. And I see more deer, which this camera is not going to pick up.
Yeah.
But
2,
three.
3.
Yeah, 3 deer. What a time to not be deer season. Because that was pretty much in pistol range.
Very small deer.
See, I grew up with deer that are on average 50 pounds lighter than they are here.
Yeah.
So I remember driving up here for the first time and seeing an 8-point buck that to me was a monster. And I asked a friend at the time, man, I just saw this behemoth. And he's like, okay, cool, whatever. And he showed me a 10-point that he got that season. That was the biggest deer I had ever seen. And he's like, no, this is actually pretty typical, not points, but weight-wise, this is actually pretty typical for around here. And I was like, oh, wait a second. Y'all have real winter in Missouri. Whereas the winters I experienced in Northeast Texas in the swamp were like 40 degrees at their coldest. Like, we'd have one day that would hit like 20 something for a few hours, and then it would get up to normal temperatures again.
Yeah.
And so the deer where I grew up just did not put on winter weight because they weren't worried about it.
Right.
They were running around so much in the heat that they didn't have fat reserves. And, oh, okay, that makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah. It was the same where I lived in the hill country. It's also growing more populous down there, and you have a disturbingly large amount of people who basically treat them as pets.
Yeah.
So,
They get fed.
Yeah, so I mean, it's nice in that sense that they don't run from you all that hard, but they are very, very small.
Yeah, well, they're super plentiful in Northeast Texas. I don't remember what year it was, but there was some year that some politician's brother hit 3 deer in 2 days in vehicles. And he made the right phone calls to the right people, and his brother made the right phone calls to the right people. And that year, deer season was substantially longer. And I don't remember what the limit was, but nobody got it because it was insanely high. And they would let you use anything to deer hunt. They got rid of having to register them at the check-ins. It was just
Open season.
Yeah, you call it in, and the closest thing to true blue open season. I mean, it went on for months.
That sounded like a blast.
Yeah, and they didn't care methods. They were like, just shoot them and tag them, and it was crazy. But I don't remember if the limit was like 15 or if it was 20 or somewhere in there, but nobody I knew got anywhere close to the limit.
I knew a guy who would have hit it.
Oh, I'm sure.
And then not reported the ones that he didn't hit. But.
Yeah, well, that's actually pretty common, is people just shooting stuff. But here in Missouri, there's provisions for if you are low budget and you want to hunt to feed yourself, conservation will give you, like, I think an additional 3
Nice.
that you're allowed to take. And then if you pair up having a farmer designate you as the nuisance hunter, it's under another provision. You're allowed to harvest on behalf of the hunter, or not the hunter, on behalf of the farmer.
Right.
And depending on what his acreage is, that could put more deer in your freezer. And then you'll have your 2 that you're typically allowed. So, I mean, you could feasibly take that initial 2 and turn it into 10, and 10 deer, you're going to be giving that stuff away.
Yeah.
Because if you get 100 pounds of meat out of it, after you debone everything, and let's say you don't eat the organ meat, and you just take,
which you should.
Right, you should. But let's just say you don't, and you just take the good cuts and the burgers, and you don't even chase after the stew meat. Like, you're easily walking away with 100 pounds of meat off of each one, and then you're still going to have stuff that you've left behind. I mean, 1,000 pounds of deer meat.
That's a lot.
Yeah, you're going to be giving that stuff away because you can't. I would be shocked if your large family of 87 children would go through 1,000 pounds of meat in a year.
Well, for a typical meal, we have 2 pounds of ground beef. So, which actually I used to do just ground turkey, but my wife bought a quarter of a cow.
Yeah.
So we've been in beef recently, and I've been enjoying that.
Yeah.
The 365. That's over 2 pounds, but yeah, you're gonna get tired of ground venison.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you can mix it if you butcher it right and you pull out all the silvery. It's not bad, and if you mix a higher fat content animal in there, especially for the burger,
right,
it's gonna matter. I'm intrigued to try sheep fat mixed in.
Oh, lamb and venison? That sounds amazing.
Because the fat content in lamb is very high.
Yeah.
So that's there. I mean, I've done beef plenty of times, and I think the flavor that is available in the beef is really good. But my wife and I acknowledged Passover the other night, and we did ground lamb because that's all I could find. And it was her first time eating sheep, and she liked it. So,
oh, sheep is my favorite.
If I win the lottery, that'll be the only meat I ever eat again. But I mean, when I move out to this acreage that we're working on developing, I really do want to raise sheep. So, be a nice meat source then.
Yeah.
I also really want to do Highland cattle, and if I can get the miniature ones that look like teddy bears.
Oh, those would be fun. Yeah. My brother started to homestead and then he backed out, but
I hear that's actually pretty common.
yeah, well, some things happened financially for him that did not fall the way he wanted them to. So he had bought a Dexter, so.
Yeah, Dexter cattle are pretty cute when they're babies too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he bought a pair, and they were supposed to breed, and so they could start getting milk. But yeah, that's supposed to be a good homesteading cow because they have decent meat and they also have decent milk. So.
And they're not huge, so they're pretty easy to butcher.
Right.
On your own. The same thing with the Highland cattle, and if you get into the miniature ones, they're even easier.
Is it too warm here for them though?
No, it's not.
Okay.
The full-blown Highlands, they have them in South Texas, and they do great down there. Oh. And you would think with that much hair that it's a problem. As long as there is shade on property, you're good. But that hair insulates and helps regulate that body temperature for them.
Right.
And you'd think they'd be a temperate climate animal, but they have done phenomenal. As long as there's water and shade, they'll go anywhere.
That's the problem in South Texas.
Yeah.
Water is an issue.
Right. But there are farmers who are doing it down there. There's farmers in East Texas that are like, that's their income is Highland cattle.
Sounds good.
And I was like, if it'll work in East Texas in the swamp, it'll work in Missouri.
Oh, yeah,
so,
for sure.
And I probably wouldn't have more than 3 cows because I'm going to be on 10 acres to start, and I want sheep. So if I'm gonna rotate for the grazing of those sheep, I really can't afford to have many cattle on property. So, have a bull and a heifer, and really, as that herd starts growing, start selling them.
Right.
Or fill that freezer quick. But I want sheep because you can freeze dry the sheep, and you can pretty much name your price for it because there's not many people doing it.
Right.
And just a freeze dried beef steak, like 6 ounces, is like $50.
Wow.
For sheep, there's people who are selling it for $100 and they're getting like a pound of it maybe.
blows my mind.
Yeah, and that's like not organic, not anything special. So you start doing, hey, this is local farm raised, no hormones, no antibiotics.
Right.
And you market that, man, you could name whatever. And I'm not even interested in like cleaning up on it. I just would want whatever the cost of the meat and the shipping to be covered and make a small profit off of it. I think you could really disrupt that market. And then take the rest of it to local restaurants, because there's not a lot of restaurants that can say locally sourced lamb.
Right.
So they could charge a premium for it, and that would still leave me with a few sheep a year to eat personally.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd really like to do, because the profit margins are there, especially in this area, because very few people raise sheep around here.
Right. You gonna learn to shear?
No, I think I'll do a hair breed, so I don't have to.
Okay.
Because the wool is really hard to profit off of right now.
Yes.
And everybody I listen to about it talks about how the juice is not really worth the squeeze. So if you do a hair breed, and no worries.
Sounds good.
You do like Katahdin, or I think Dorpers are a hair breed. I don't remember. But that Dorper is the Black Angus of lamb. So
there's a lot of meat on it.
There's pretty reasonable meat on them, and the flavor of those Dorpers is highly sought after. That's why they're the Black Angus of sheep. We're really close to 18 minutes deep just talking about sheep and cows and deer.
A colleague at Jiu-Jitsu was talking about ADD and mentioned a supplement that she was taking for it. It's called SAM-E. I looked it up. It does not have very good research on what the applications are. They seem to use it for liver disease and other things. They use it in Europe more than they use it here. But I was not sure about taking a supplement, so I looked. It's manufactured normally in your body. It's some kind of amino acid, and it apparently does come from red meat. So if you wanted that.
So the amino acid is beneficial for that ADD, ADHD.
Yeah, it does something to your DNA. Real complicated.
Well, I know a lot of B vitamins are very useful in DNA reproduction, and not like having babies, but like your cells
Right.
actually remaking themselves the way they're supposed to be remade.
Yeah.
And that's why your B complexes are good for your energy.
Yeah, I know when I was a kid, dietitians were saying that red meat was bad for you. What did I know as a kid? But I was like, that doesn't sound right. And yeah, it turns out that there's a lot of good things that you can get from beef that you can't get from chicken. So
Yeah. Well, the chicken that exists in our grocery stores is a mutant.
Yeah.
Pretty much every chicken that you eat in the United States, unless you raise it yourself, is a Cornish cross. And those Cornish crosses, they're genetically designed for meat production, and they're not long-term sustainable breeds. They just grow really fast, and it's how Tyson can claim no antibiotics, no hormones. It's because those hormones and antibiotics are physically genetically engineered into their DNA. So it's when you get chickens that look like turkeys.
Yeah.
Because of how huge they swell up to, how quickly. Like they mature in like 13 weeks, I think.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, they're not natural. They die anytime people try and raise them on their own. They put on meat too fast and their tendons can't support them. Like it's a big deal. You get into literally any other breed of chicken and they actually have flavor, whereas that Cornish cross doesn't.
Yeah. And I'm curious because my wife worked out a deal with a friend so that her friend is going to raise the chickens and we're just going to come by and help butcher one day.
Sweet.
And so we'll finance a little bit of it as well. And we'll get a cut of chicken. Pun intended.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the texture of that white meat that we're going to get because
it'll be tougher, but the fat content that'll be in it, like it'll be the best chicken you've ever eaten.
Oh, I'm sure it will. Not ever. I used to have that kind of stuff when I was a little kid, but I was not paying attention.
Right.
I do not remember how a good home-raised chicken tastes. But yeah, I'm curious about what's going to happen with that.
See, my in-laws raise turkeys. And so long as they are doing that, I will not be able to raise birds because of disease transfer.
Oh, yeah.
And if I do, they'll never be able to come over to my house and I'll never be able to go over to theirs. And I like my in-laws, so.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, you might have an excuse if you...
But I'm thinking about tilapia. Yeah, let's do the hill. I'd like to do aquaponics, and tilapia are really easy to raise. They will eat your table scraps.
Yeah.
And I figure I can get some neighbors to raise chicken and we can trade meat and eggs for tilapia and sheep and be all right. And if I could milk one of those Highland cattle, I hear their milk's really good. I'm sure I've drank some of it when I was in Ireland and just not known.
Right.
But I mean, I always loved the milk over there, but they didn't separate the cream from the milk. So I think that's why I liked it, because that cream fat was in there and it was delicious. But
yeah, that's the other thing you could do. I mean, I would imagine that if you can find the right customers, you can really probably do decently well homesteading. But it's that problem of the distribution, you know.
You need to find like 3 really swanky restaurants and, hey, I'm going to provide this many pounds of meat to you on these schedules.
Yeah, that could work.
But I would imagine one restaurant would probably be enough of a client.
Yeah.
But if you had 3, that would give you some diversity.
Yeah.
But you could do one animal for one restaurant. So that way that restaurant could pay you exclusivity for your sheep, your cattle, your chickens, whatever.
Right. And then you could name them after the restaurant.
There you go.
Keep the track.
But
yeah, I was just thinking the problem is the people who value the locally sourced GMO, non-GMO, all that stuff, they tend to live in the city.
right.
So, you've got to find a person who values that and has the money to pay for it.
But
Whereas you're going to be living out in the country, so it's that, distribution problem.
well, the distances from where we're going to be living to a city that has more than 100,000 people is not that far.
Right.
And if you're only making one trip every other week, that's not bad.
Right.
And that's a frequent setup where they may not be going through it that fast, or you could be at such a heavy scale that they want it every other day. I don't know, but
right.
I would think bringing them 50 pounds of lamb would get them through a little while. It could be frozen and they thaw out 10 pounds at a time. That gets them through 2 or 3 days. I don't know that I can produce sheep that fast, but even if it's a seasonal thing that they keep on their menu.
Right.
Because I would need a whole lot more than 10 acres to really supply that at scale.
Yeah, I knew a guy in New Mexico who kept a flock of about 100 to 150 sheep at any given time. That might be what you're doing, but
I don't have the land for that.
yeah, he had a lot more land than 10 acres.
I mean, if you're trying to brush clear land, you could do that, but you'd run out of greenery really quick.
Right.
Because you can put sheep and goats on land that you need to brush hog, and they'll clear it for you. And then you just got to go in with an axe or a chainsaw and get
all the trees.
Yep.
The little woody plants out of the way.
Yep. But yeah, back on your red meat thing. It's good for you, but it doesn't need to be your sole source.
Right. I mean, it seems to me like the most healthy option would be a diversity of food, So, and hopefully not mutant food.
Right.
But that gets expensive,
It does. And that's why I think the homesteading of at least raising your own food, and not all of it, but if you could have, a half-acre garden would put a lot of produce on your table for your size family.
Yeah.
You mix in a half dozen cattle and you butcher one a year, so that way you're not messing with replacement rates.
Right.
And I don't know, a dozen chickens.
Yeah, just
It wouldn't eliminate your grocery bill, but you could your size family, that would probably be, I don't know, maybe 40% of your groceries.
Yeah.
Which is noticeable.
The thing is, though, that homesteading like that is so work intensive. So.
Yeah, it is, but you also have child labor that you can exploit to go gather eggs and feed chickens and make sure the cows have water and help you weed the garden.
Well, I do.
Yeah, you do.
You will too. I mean,
I will, but
your kids are coming along.
Yeah. My 2-year-old was helping me dig my garden the other day. And it's just a couple of beds. It's nothing huge. But I don't know, maybe it's the size of a queen mattress. But that counts the walkway. So maybe a twin size bed is the size that it'll actually come out to, but it was really cute. He was trying to help me haul dirt, and he's a 2.5-year-old, so
right.
He had maybe a pound of dirt in a 5-gallon bucket and was bringing it over to my pile. And he's like, "Daddy, I help?" And I was like, "Yes, sir, you are." And it was very warming to my heart, so.
Yeah. But the soil here is so poor, though.
Yeah, we're probably gonna mix some fertilizer in. I mean, it's gonna be natural, but still.
Right.
But if we can use this as an opportunity for us to learn, it'll be helpful.
Like you as your family?
Yeah, we got to learn what works, what doesn't work.
Yeah.
Throw some taters in the ground, some spinach and carrots, and see what we get. But on that note, plant your gardens, go do hard things.